Patty, you there? Patty, if you're there, I think you muted and I can't hear you.
Press on, got it, okay.
Oh yeah, I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, something came across the screen. So anyway, I used to live on San Antonio Road and, by I lived in Greenhouse 2. Now, is this somebody else that's there?
She's my legislative aide, so she's actually
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to
she's
meet you.
actually doing some research on this, so I just encouraged her to attend. So
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So I also want to mention to you that I served 10 years on Palo Alto Housing, the housing board, and that has become named now Alta Housing.
Mhm.
And you're familiar probably that they have about 1,000 units spread
Mhm.
throughout the city. And we even have a development kitty corner from Channing House that is part of the Alta Housing.
Mhm.
And so the whole idea of doing infill housing and subsidized housing is a necessity because you can't get past this problem without affordable housing. So I just wanted you to know my background was 10 years on Palo Alto Housing. Also, I worked 8 years for Habitat for Humanity for the County of San Mateo, head of development there. So, and then in the 80s, I ran a shelter for homeless families in Los Angeles.
Wow, quite a background. Thank you.
So I have a housing. My passion is housing, actually, but that
great.
doesn't mean that you can solve this problem. But so I guess I just wanted to say, LifeMoves, you hire them to provide these services, you're going to house people, but unless you have a plan to help people get out of the situation, it is just going to be a recycling of homeless. And so first of all, you need to have the services people need. You need transportation. Easy, there they are out there, San Antonio Road, but they have to have access to healthcare, help with their income and help finding housing. They're not just sitting out there and then magically they're going to find housing. No. And then the city itself has a responsibility when you do something like this to add to the housing stock. So there is a ghost of a chance that people can, find housing. If you just warehouse them out there and then send them back out into the street. So also, just remember that like Alta Housing has that SRO down on Alta, on Alma, and services like that are just really, really also important. And the thing is that they are so successful. People live long periods of time well if you do decent housing. So I just, the other thing I want to be very brazen and ask you to please read there's a fairly new book. You may know the man, is Desmond. He wrote a book called Evicted. He was a Pulitzer Prize winner for that, but he has a new book called Poverty by America. And the point of this book is that we as middle and upper middle class benefit from people being poor. It's an incredible book. It's getting rave reviews and I highly commend it. And I can tell you, you'll find Palo Alto described in sad ways there, but it's a profound book. So anyway, I just wanted to ask you, and I know it's a hard job to talk with all the council, and everybody's so sure of what they want and how everything's going to work so great, and everybody's going to just love being out at the Baylands and all that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's next to like a water treatment plant.
But you
Oh.
heard one of your council members say people would love to be out, it's a crazy statement, but yes, it's out in it's not in the right place. It should not be out there. So anyway, you have a real responsibility. You just don't want to be caught just housing for the cycle of homelessness. And you really need to provide the services that are going to make a difference. And it's going to take commitment to more long-term housing and commitment to much better services than you, I think, presently can provide. So you'll need to put some money into that and some thought into that.
So Patty, given what you know right now, what do you think we should do about the LifeMoves site that's being proposed?
Well, I that's a very difficult question because I think it's a done deal. And so it should have never been put out there as soon as it was announced. And let me say something that is a little bit off the question. Please don't put a lot of housing down on San Antonio Road on the other side. You're saying the same thing there. You don't want the people here. You're just gonna shove them all across the street. And when Palo Alto needs children for schools and all, you're setting everything up so that your statement, the council statement is, we don't want those people here. And of course, that is what I think is the truth of the matter. If you could change the site, but I don't see that's if you're being honest, I can't imagine that you would think they're going to discuss that tomorrow night. That's just, but given the problems you have with the site, this is maybe my strategy would suggest to you is, then we have to do everything we can. We have to put transportation, maybe those Teslas that are free to come back and forth have to be made available to the people out there. Right now we're saying those don't go out to the Baylands, but you're going to have to go way out of your way to provide services out there. And then you're going to have to say, we have to have a commitment to build affordable housing, not in 5 years, but starting as soon as we possibly can, so that there's at least some options for people. I mean, honestly, I can't imagine the rest of the council considering anything other than passing it. Maybe one or two of you might question it, but.
So do you know much about the organization LifeMoves?
They're a good organization, but when you ask someone to do the impossible, and I know from Channing House, it's hard to get people to do, our work staff, and because of course there's no housing that people can afford and everything. They're definitely there. They try they do as good as anybody can in an impossible situation. This is impossible if you don't provide housing, and we're asking people to do the impossible, and it's not fair. But they mean well, and I would be very praising of their intentions, their profession, but they don't have enough staff. And they have this job of people finding housing, and there isn't any housing. Good luck. I mean, honestly. I mean, I think you have to have an honest discussion tomorrow about the fact that there isn't any housing. So you've got to deal with that. Now that's just me, but.
Yeah. Well, I'm generally very pro housing, so I'm in agreement with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that came out, and Chloe, maybe you could talk a little bit about it, but there was a article, or maybe a couple of articles that came out when were they? When did they come out again, Chloe?
They're pretty recent. I think they're both, one was written maybe a few months ago, the other one like further months ago. It was like a 2-part investigation recently.
Oh, of LifeMoves.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and there were criticisms. And again, I don't, I think some of the criticisms are the fact that they don't have adequate staff, but that's because of the situation in this area here. So I operated a shelter for homeless families in Pomona, California, but we did have some housing, there was a chance. So yes, I saw those negative, and I think they have to rectify that. They have to do some things about that. And I think that the other thing is our expectations have to be realistic. And so but you're going to bring people into this shelter, if you're going to limit the Opportunity Center, unfortunately, was supposed to be transitional housing, and it isn't. Is this somebody else that you want to talk?
I think this is for the next office hours. Actually, let me enable the waiting room, and let me see here. Sorry, I should have done it earlier. Lenore, I'm going to place you into the waiting room. So let me just,
Okay, sure. Thanks.
yeah,
Thanks.
no problem. You're
I
a
was
little
just
early.
testing the link. Yeah, I know.
No problem. No, so just hang on, and
Okay, sure.
and
Sorry, I
yeah,
apologize.
no problem. Okay, and Shireen,
But I wouldn't go after them, honestly, Craig. I would really go after yourselves for the situation we have here. I don't mean that personally, but I do think, given the impossible task, and I started to say that, you may be aware of it, the Opportunity Center was supposed to be transitional, but it never got off the ground in the proper way. And so now it's just, it's really doesn't function other than just to let people live in an inappropriate way. So, but I think you just have to give this the support you need, and you have to turn around and say, we can't do anything like this unless we're going to support housing.
Yeah. I think that's really well said. I think actually, Chloe, can you just quickly summarize what were the top 2 or 3 things that the articles were saying? Because I think one of them was what Patty said was staffing, and I think that is what it is. What were the other ones that articles mentioned?
Yeah, she definitely touched on 2 of their big points, which was staffing, and then the second point, and I think kind of the overarching theme, is that interim housing programs don't work if there's not places to discharge people. Those were 2 of the big things. Some of them were a little bit smaller, like facility issues. Yeah, the staffing really was the main thing. And then also another point they had was just their efficacy rate, which actually I wanted to ask. Again, I'm not sure like how much you know about LifeMoves. If there were to be an interim housing program, although like I understand, I agree with you that we should be focusing on creating the affordable housing. Do you think that there would be a better option? I'm curious about what
I'm going to say no.
options.
I'm going to say no, because right now they are the provider in the area. They're, they have one in Menlo Park. I do think that they're the committed group. I think faith communities, I think people want to get behind them, but again, it has to have some realistic expectations. And I think we're kind of blaming the victim, is my sense. I think the fact that they weren't staffed adequately, my guess is they would like to be staffed adequately, but it's tough, we really are asking a huge amount of anyone to do what the goal of this is. And so it's important to recognize that and acknowledge the tough job, but that doesn't mean we don't want success. But success doesn't come without a lot of other things besides just giving them a contract.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, because they can't provide the housing, they can't make the housing happen.
Right.
Unless you want to have them try to find housing over in Fremont or something.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, we're talking Palo Alto, and Palo Alto doesn't want to provide housing to people. You know, they don't want anyone new. They, you know, I mean, I'm sad about it because you know, I'm committed to Palo Alto, but I'm also very sad about the values that I hear us espousing these days. Not in my backyard. Don't decrease. And the poverty book talks about, you know, people like us are afraid that it'll decrease our value, even though everything here is so valuable to begin with. You know,
So Patty, I gotta jump to my next office
yes,
hour.
of course you do.
But thank you for joining. And one thing I would say about affordable housing and something that I've been pushing quite
Mhm.
as much as I can is, you know, I think one of the ways to actually get more affordable housing is to actually have smaller units. Because if you look at the average it's like size of a house for a family, it's getting bigger and bigger over time. And at the same time, the average family is actually getting smaller, which is kind of ridiculous, right? So you have the housing size getting bigger, and the family size are actually getting smaller. And
But I think we're talking about housing through Alta housing or Alta or other subsidized
well,
housing.
I think there's that too, but smaller units are naturally more affordable. And you know, if you go to other
Not for families that are down at the lowest level.
well,
I
smaller
mean,
units are
I guess
inherently.
I guess I would ask you to, I do think that these, if we formed an area where you put housing that is the very small housing, that is again, maybe a 2 or 3 year thing, and you put services, they have to have services though. Again, you can't, so anyway, I think you have to have subsidized housing. And do you ever work with Alta housing? Because
I actually used to be the representative. I was on the planning commission for many years, and so I used to be the representative. So I'm very familiar with.
well,
In
do
fact,
you know that?
you might. In fact, you might have been on the board when I was the.
Do you
rep.
know the guy that heads up Alta housing? Because he was at Mountain View when they did a lot of their major development. And Mountain View, I think, is a real model. And Randy Tasuda is the
Yeah.
head of Alta housing.
I've
And
met him a couple of times. I don't know
he
him.
knows, if you want to talk about housing, he knows more about
Mm.
housing than anybody else in the area. And he has done it in Mountain View. So I think if I were you, I'd work with him.
Well, thank you so much, Patty, for your time and your
Okay.
insights. Really appreciate it.
Okay. And I have a family, my family lives in Japan.
Awesome.